Welcome to the Grow and Expand with Ace podcast, where we break through limitations, we heal from within, and we step into our most expansive, highest, most fulfilled, and happiest lives. Thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast, where we are going to be delving into the world of the avoidant. And truth be told, I wasn't actually planning on speaking about the avoidant today. You all would know that one of the last and previous episodes that I spoke to was the anxious attachment style. And the reason I wasn't planning on delving into the avoidant style is two reasons. One, it's one that is incredibly prickly. If you've got the avoidant attachment style and you're operating from that space, you're an avoidant, which is just obviously a terminology for ways of showing up and dealing with things, which we'll delve into. It's an incredibly prickly attachment style to have and way of operating. And second, it's one that I have found incredibly difficult myself to work through and to learn to love and work with and to heal. And like most of these things go, us perfectionists, if we're not perfect at something yet, we don't necessarily want to tell the world about it. However, I was driving this morning to the studio and I just found myself mid-podcast episode sort of conversation in my mind speaking about the avoidant. And obviously that's my number one sign to know that it's a knowing and a truth in me that wants to be birthed and spoken about. And so I honor those truths, I honor those knowings, I honor those wisdoms and those pulls. And so here I am. I'm going to speak about the avoidant, and I have done zero prep for it, apart from this morning's mind rambling. So I know there's people out there that needs to hear about it, otherwise it wouldn't have come up. And I know everything that I speak about will be giving you tools and some light into what an avoidant even is. And so I can't wait to delve into it, which I will do now. The avoidant, what is that? What is an avoidant? So if you remember back to one of the previous episodes, and if you haven't listened to that one yet, you can, we delved into and spoke about an anxious attachment style. And I'm not going to elaborate on exactly what that is here because you can go back to the previous episode and listen to that. But essentially, where an anxious attachment style seeks closeness of connection and it seeks closeness in relationships, well, the avoidant is obviously the opposite side of that coin. It seeks to avoid. And the reason I can speak about both is because I have both the anxious avoidant attachment style within my operating system, as well as the avoidant attachment style within my operating system. All of us do. So all of us will flip in and out of these, but we will also have a predominant style that we operate on average in life. The other really curious thing about it is some of our relationships, we will show up in more of the anxious attachment style and the anxious capacity. And in other relationships, we always, show up in the different. We might show up in the avoidant attachment style and in the avoidant capacity. And I always like to ask people the question, once they understand both anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, I ask them to get really intentional and clear about their closest relationships. So obviously sort of thinking partner, children, and those really important relationships to you that you want to make work, and ask yourself which attachment style you're showing up in those relationships. Because typically that will be the direct mirror in for you as to which emotional attachment style you're showing up in from yourself and for yourself, within yourself. So at the very heart of the avoidant parts of our personalities and our attachment styles lies a deep, deep-seated fear and uncomfortability with pain. So the avoidant really only has one job and one job only. And that's to protect you from feeling and experiencing the full effects and emotional sensations and experience of pain. And so what would have happened if you are predominantly operating in the avoidant attachment style is somewhere in your life, You either had one, but it's hardly ever going to be one. It will be many moments and many circumstances and many times where you sought a positive emotion. Now, no emotion is positive or negative. All of them are equally valued and should be felt as that. But I use positive in the sense of something that feels good, that we seek, that feels comfortable, that feels safe, that feels expansive. You were acting in certain ways, showing up probably just as you, the human being that you are, not overthinking anything. And you were showing up in those emotions, the higher sort of vibrational emotions, and you got hurt. And you got hurt very likely by the people that you sought the love from the most. So the people that you loved the most, the people that you admired the most, the people that you wanted to love you the most. In those moments, that would have caused unbearable amounts of confusion, overwhelm, and pain. And then this typically happens when we're in childhood. So think about if you're a young child and you're just being a child playing and you've done something that from your parents' perspective and lens is wrong, outside of the rules, whatever words you want to put to it, and you're met with wrath and you're met with yelling at a very high octave and you're met with belting and you're met with being put in a room and having that door closed and isolation, right? You can imagine a little human who looks to their parents and can see no wrong and only feels love and seeks closeness and connection. You can imagine that little human, when they are then met with that level of pain, they need to cope in some way, shape, or form. And so what happens is we develop the avoidant inside of us. Our nervous system goes into overload, and the avoidant comes in to try and protect us from feeling that pain and that overwhelm and unsafety and fear. And how does it do that? The anxious tries to seek them out and seeks reassurance later on that it's all going to be okay from that exact person that hurt them. The avoidant switches off and learns to disconnect, switch off from their emotional experience. Because if I'm switching off from my emotional experience, it's not as overwhelming. If I switch off from the pain, it's not obviously as painful. And if I actually don't engage and feel what's coming up organically and naturally in this moment, because we're not sitting there with a computer picking how we want to feel, it just is. It's a natural reaction. And when it's so uncomfortable and it's too much for us, well, if I move away from it or move away from circumstances that's likely to trigger or activate it, well, I won't feel that way. And I don't want to feel that way. It's too much and I don't know what to do with it and how to process it. So I disconnect and I switch off. How can you tell whether someone's an avoidant attachment style? I mean, in a relationship, it shows up everywhere, right? It shows up with how they deal with themselves. So if they're not attuned to their own needs, their own wants, their own desires, if they're not attuned to what their emotions are saying to themselves as they come up, obviously there's a sense of disconnect and of an avoidant there. When it comes to relationships, like being in a partnership with someone like that or in a relationship with someone like that, the avoidant will do whatever they can to move away from a moment or an experience that triggers them to feel the emotions as they come up and bubble. And they'll seek to do this in a couple of ways. It's so incredibly important that everyone who listens and hears to this knows nobody is doing this intentionally. It's a learned behavior and a protective measure that was engineered by the person at a time when they were probably helpless and didn't know any different, that has served them incredibly well. And so there is no shame around it. There is no guilt around it. There is nothing wrong or bad around it. It is what it is. And you either, are happy to live with it, and that's perfectly okay, or it's something that you want to work on and through, and that's perfectly okay. But in a relationship sense, the avoidant will try to move away from that moment of overload of emotion that they perceive as painful, and it is painful for them in their perception. And they'll try to do this in a number of ways. Well, they'll either try to avoid having the conversation in total, like you'll bring something up and they'll jump to something else. And it's just that avoidant mechanism to not deal with the thing that they think is going to cause them the uncomfortable emotions and the pain underneath that. They will try to, if they are engaging and if they're in the moment of, not fleeing, essentially, either fleeing in the topic or fleeing potentially from the room, what they'll do is the way in which they'll respond to you when you bring up something, when you try to share something that's hurt you, if you're trying to share with them an experience you're having, what they'll do is they will try to move away from what that means for them, because what that means from them and about them and to them will trigger those emotions, and the emotions is warning signs that it's not good, avoid at all cost, it hurts, it's painful. So what that person will do is they will invalidate you. They will turn it from them to you. So they will turn it away from them because that activates the pain, and they're trying to avoid that because they see it as danger. So they turn it to you in whatever way, shape, or form. Invalidation is at the root of it. So, that can take so many shapes and forms that it's not funny. So I can't sit here today explaining all of them, but it looks like not taking any accountability, because taking accountability obviously is painful and vulnerable, and that's what's being avoided by the avoidant. It looks like blaming you, like blame shifting, because if it's you and if it's your failures, and I'm doing quotation marks, and your actions that's, wrong, then I can house imperfections in you that I can house, but I can't house it in me. And so they'll turn it around and they'll shift it. That's one way, right, of how the avoidant attachment style shows up in relationships. In a career sense, the avoidant, just a normal kind of career looks like whenever there's a perceived threat to their job or something isn't going exactly as they want, and then the result of that is it brings up some pain in them. Like, let's say there's someone who's performing much better, and no matter how much you're kind of trying, you can't kind of get to that level, and you seek to operate at that level so that you can, from the external out, get the acknowledgement and the feel-good kind of mirroring and comments and relationship. And you can't get that, well, it becomes too painful and the avoidant will leave. So the avoidant will jump from one job to the next job, to the next job, to the next job, to the next job, and it'll always be why they've left that specific job. But it will never be the full acknowledgement that it's could potentially be, and I probably need to get curious with the fact that perhaps I'm doing some things or I'm not doing some things, and looking at that and trying to work through the relationship, right? Because that's the key part that the avoidant struggles to do. It's to work through conflict. It's to work through what is needed to make any relationship thrive, which is the confronting moments where the breakthroughs can happen. Because those moments are a lot of emotions, and obviously in the emotions it's pain, and they're trying to avoid. As entrepreneurs, if you're someone, this is where I started having to work on my avoidant. My avoidant probably doesn't come up in personal relationships. Like, sometimes it does, but it's so few and far between that it's not even something I probably would have consciously recognized, not even during any stage of my healing and personal development. It was in my business and in my entrepreneurship that I really realized the avoidant, because essentially what was happening is I would get a clear knowing and a pull and a vision towards something I wanted to move towards, something I wanted to create, a message I wanted to give, whatever that kind of looks like. But because the minute I get the vision and I sort of start taking steps towards it, within me I have limiting beliefs, and I had past fears and past experiences around rejection, around failure, around abandonment. And so I would put these projections onto these products and services and marketing and expression of my full voice. And that would activate that avoidant in me, like, Sharné, if you are going to do this and that's going to happen, and that's what's happened in the past, that's what's going to happen in the future, because that's the false narrative, right? It's going to be painful. Remember how painful it was when you were rejected? Do you remember how much it hurt when you showed the way and people didn't follow and they ridiculed you? Do you remember the overwhelm? And so obviously then my avoidant goes, well, I'm here to protect you. And so I couldn't see things through. I would have the idea, I would get 2 steps in, and I would abandon it. And it never was this clear to me, right? Until I started doing the work. I had always had my own backfills and reasonings and excuses as to why I was only half finishing projects, having the vision, taking some steps, and then it wasn't working, etc., etc. It wasn't until I worked through all of my own bullshit that I realized at the core of me, my avoidant is riding shotgun when it comes to my business, and it's trying to save me from a pain way back in the past that's costing me my vision and my future and the joy of that and the joy in creating the message, regardless of who might reject. For 2 rejections, there'll be 10 acceptances. And it's costing me that. And that cost became greater than what I was willing to put up with, that I started to look at my avoidant. For anybody who has burnt out in the past, this was also a really big piece for me. For anyone who's burnt out in the past, you obviously have a baseline operative system that tends to operate to your maximum capacity to such an extent that you burn out. Okay, so that's self-abandonment at its heart. And that's your natural baseline, otherwise you wouldn't have gotten to it in the first place. You didn't self-protect and preserve and autocorrect. You allowed yourself to get to that bottom. You would have heard in all my previous podcasts, that was me, so I can say it confidently, wholeheartedly knowing it. And so if you're someone whose base operative line is that, and you haven't worked on those core kind of patterns of thinking and behaving that basically allows you to show up in that space, or that is the thing that's driving you to show up from that place, the avoidant in you will not feel safe enough to allow you and your business to grow past a certain capacity and ceiling, because it will perceive in so many different ways, shapes, and forms that just means, Sharné, that you're going to burn out again. You're going to start self-abandoning again. You're going to start skipping breakfasts again. You're going to start having no skincare routine. You're going to start drinking again. You're going to start not spending time with your kids, connecting in their fun and happiness. You're going to start totally losing yourself. And that was painful last time. We hit rock bottom before you listened. We don't want to get there. And so the avoidant to try and protect you from that future pain will keep you back until you've actually worked on those core wounds and blocks and released them. And that was a really big piece in my journey as well to where I am today. My number one goal always has been, I'm so incredibly passionate about being a very successful career woman. But my number one thing is love and connection. And that starts at home with my children and now myself. Obviously, way back when it was my children, not so much myself. Now it's both. And so because my entire being knows that, my system knows that it's got to kick in when I'm not up to actually believing that I can do that. And so then my avoidant comes in and it protects and it blocks off. And then I come up with thousands of different reasons and bullshit excuses. And, it takes many ways, shapes, and forms, and it'll be different for everyone. But really, it's your avoidant coming out in your business and in your entrepreneurship, trying to protect you from what pain it predicts you're going to suffer in the future. And so I just thought that was also a really important point to kind of touch on. And so that is, in a nutshell, how an avoidant shows up in some of those key areas in our lives. Perhaps the other one to touch on is children. If you were a child who had big emotions, and, well, I shouldn't even say that because you're just a child who had emotions. If you were a child who had emotions and your parents couldn't meet you at the emotional level that you were at, they would have reacted in a number of different ways, okay? But in some way, shape, or form, they shut you down because they couldn't house it. And when they shut you down because they couldn't house it, that hurt. And because that hurt, your avoidant kicked in to try and protect you. And because your avoidant kicked in and tried to protect you, you've learned to do that growing up. And as you now have children and they have emotions that are big, or they call you in the other room because they need something from you and it starts hurting inside, it's painful almost, or they want to play with you, any of those things, and that avoidant, that pain, that block, like you just can't, it's the avoidant. It's the avoidant trying to protect you from pain you experienced when you were a child, same as them looking for something you didn't get, and it perceives that going into that same environment now is going to be equally painful. And once you do the work and you work through it, you obviously realize it's not. But just because it's not in theory doesn't mean your body believes it yet, doesn't mean your mind believes it yet, and doesn't mean energetically that's where you're at. Okay, that's why we do the work. And so that avoidant can be very problematic in our lives. It can block us from a lot of goodness. If you think about it, at its very core, the avoidant blocks pain, which is an emotion and it's a sensation. And if you've developed an internal mechanism that blocks the pain and the emotion, you might be fucking great at operating and operating at 150, 180, 200%, being a badass boss bitch because you're not feeling what's actually going on underneath. It doesn't mean it's not going on. It means you're not giving it airtime to tell you. And so there will be periods where you are so overwhelmed where you can't help but feel those feelings. But because you can't feel those feelings or deal with them, you'll try and avoid them and the cycle just continues. So yes, when we avoid, you might be at that operating level. But if you avoid emotions and sensations like pain, you avoid emotions and sensations like love. If you avoid emotions and sensations like full-on grief and crying, you avoid emotions and sensations like laughter from the belly. When you avoid emotions and sensations, you avoid them all. The avoidant is a wall, and the wall doesn't let anyone in or anyone out, probably including yourself, which is why you're operating at 200% and not turning inward and listening. And obviously at the heart of who we all are as human beings is love. We seek connection. We seek community. We seek belonging. We seek joy, laughter, play, expansiveness, freedom. And if you want to experience any of these sensations and emotions, but you haven't learned how to work with the avoidant, you actually can't. You'll only be able to experience one emotion to the depth and extent as you can house its equal and opposite. And so I hope everyone really understands that avoidance purpose is to keep you from pain, but it is the thing that keeps you from the love that you so deserve and so desire. Okay, great, Sharné. We now understand the avoidant a little bit. It's the first time a lot of you will have heard about it. It's perhaps the first time a lot of you would have heard it in this specific and unique way. How do we get rid of it? I can hear everyone's minds. How do we get rid of it? Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of it. Right? Good luck. Because when you're saying you want to get rid of something, you are giving it more power. You are feeding it more. You only want to get rid of it because it feels uncomfortable to know, because you don't want to feel the uncomfortable emotion, which is what created the avoidant in the very first instance. Okay, so how do we learn to feel is the real question. And this is, I will tell you hand on heart, why breaking that avoidant, dissolving its prickles and its walls is so incredibly hard. Because the answer lies in staying open in your heart and staying in love through pain. That's the first step. Because when we stay open in our hearts and present in love, where pain is present, we douse it in that love, we douse it in that openness, we feel it, and as we feel it, we build the tolerance to it. And as we build the tolerance to it, we give it the message that it's safe to feel. I am safe to feel all my emotions. I am safe to house all of my emotions. No, they don't all have the steering wheel. I'm not even going to get into that one again. Listen to Parts Work. I'm not sure which episode that was, where I spoke about that. I think it might have been Inner Child Healing, actually. You don't give those things the steering wheel, but you hold space for it. And so you're building that muscle little by little by little. Your nervous system will only allow you to go to the depths that you can go to. You can't go deeper. It's a staged process and you don't have to overthink it because your body will guide you to what you're at. You can't go to where you can't go. It's as simple as that. You can't see what you can't see. You can't feel what you can't feel. And so it almost happens like a dripping tap. But every time the tap drips and you close it up, the pressure inside builds and the dripping doesn't come out. Okay? And so then we're just avoiding. We're disconnecting. Every time the tap drips and you allow it, who gives a fuck how slow or fast? It is irrelevant what a concept time is. Every time you allow it to drip, you are giving yourself the greatest gift of all fucking time. The gift of feeling love. Yes, it's painful. Every little drip, let's say it's hot water dripping on that floor, is a little bit painful. But in those in-between moments, that love that you feel, that those glimmers of joy, expansiveness, freedom, it's phenomenal. And so you're giving yourself that gift. And after a long time, that warm water, you've acclimatized. So it's no longer what was very sharp and painful at the start is less. And you open it up a little bit more. And now there's a trickle. And throughout this whole process, the one thing we haven't done is closed it up and stacked it all back up in and allowed the pressure to build. Pressure's coming out. And now it's streaming, so now it's painful again. We have to acclimatize to the new one. We have to get used to the new one. But because we've taught ourselves the first process and the first trickles, and we've seen it happen and we see it work out and we've seen ourselves acclimatized and we've seen how amazing it pays off on that love, happiness, freedom, expansiveness side, joy, laughter, we know, right? We know. So like before you know it, you're acclimatized to that one and you open it up a little bit more and that process kind of just continues. And that is honestly the best way that I am able to today explain to you the process of learning to allow the avoidant to feel safe in big emotions and in pain. And it is definitely something that has served me incredibly well in an incredibly short period of time in my business and in my entrepreneurship, as I learned to house those uncomfortable, vulnerable, perceived threats and how to house and process that and then continue to open the tap. It is just the consistency. It's the consistency. It gave me consistency in how I show up, and it's just been totally transformational. So I hope that everyone has got a bit of an idea now around the avoidant, and if they can, recognize that either in themselves or if they can recognize it in their relationships. The key thing, just to mention before I close off in relationships, is any relationship, no matter how soul match, heart match, life match you are, and no matter, kind of what, the two people can have the best intentions and the best skill set. Any relationship will have periods in time where one person hurts the other. Obviously, there's a line. Obviously, there's a sum of the whole. Obviously, there's boundaries. So if someone is doing it more often than not, or it doesn't feel right or good to you, or it's in the abusive space, then this is not what I'm talking about here. But I am talking about is this piece that you can't cut off everyone that hurts you. You can't cut off everyone that triggers you. You can't cut off and move forward from everyone that's not in your highest vibrational energy space from a place of light and love, because that really is one sign and one sign only. You can't deal with pain, because any relationship will do that. People will hurt people. Unfortunately, that is how it is. And unfortunately, the way to enhance connection and to show true love and to grow together is in that pain, both of those people being willing to meet each other and struggle and wrestle their way through that so that they can learn and grow, knowing they're both not perfect, they're not managing that correctly, but that their heart and that their intentions is in the right place. And can you imagine how painful that piece is when you first open your heart and they open their heart and here you are struggling, and you've got to keep your heart open as the avoidant in that. You've got to trust that that person loves you. You've got to trust that this scenario and relationship is worth you showing up for, trying to see whether if you show up in a feeling way, you can work through it. And then obviously the ultimate question because there's such a fine line between that and putting up with toxic behavior. Like, it's such a fine line. And the overthinking that can come with that is so big. So the number one thing is you'll know. Your knowing will know. So if you can quieten your mind and you can tap into your knowing, then you already know the answer. So that's the answer. Number two, if you've gone on long enough, you have actually done the process of staying in it, opening your heart, trying to work through, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. That's the pattern. That's the circle. So it hasn't worked. So that's another little tip. Number three, if you're opening your heart and you're letting your avoidant guard down to face that vulnerability and that pain that will come from connecting with that person in the fight, the issue, the topic, to try and resolve it and grow and expand together, like the trajectory you want to head to in these conversations, and the intent behind them is obviously healing and love and connection, not breaking each other down and, badly influencing towards values and actions and things that doesn't align with who you are inside. But when you have that bravery and you do that and you take that step and you turn to your partner, your friend, your mother, your who the fuck ever, and you reach out your hand through the pain, you reach your hand out through the overwhelm, and you stay open, and they say, I'm not coming, that's your answer. They're not coming. It takes two. If you stay and keep doing that, obviously and evidently what will happen is you will only reaffirm why the avoidant was created in the first place, which was to protect you from the pain from the people you love the most, who doesn't come and meet you where you want to be met at, need to be met at, desire to be met at. I hope this has given you some insights into things that I've reached and stages and phases I've reached, and in some relationships more than others. And in some relationships I can't reach it at all, but no one has to be perfect and no one has to reach it everywhere. And at the right time, the right thing will come. But I just felt this morning that the avoidant is a topic that warranted a place on my podcast and warranted a discussion. And despite my head telling me I didn't know enough about it after recording, I'd say that was a big, fat, limiting belief and lie. So wishing absolutely everyone here who's tuned in today a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. Please, if you can like the podcast, it would mean the world to me, because the more likes it gets, the more people we reach that needs this medicine, that needs the messages, that needs the context. So I would truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. If you enjoyed it, if it resonated, if it sparked up your soul, hit follow, because then you get notified every week when a new episode drops. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. All my love, S.